Tyler from Columbia, South Carolina. I've noticed that in recent years there have been a lot of injuries in WWE, and I wanted to get your opinion on the idea of WWE having two off seasons throughout the year. One that starts a week or two after SummerSlam, and the second would be when they come back in November to build towards Survivor Series, and the week after that, we don't see them again until January to build towards the Royal Rumble. I wish they could operate like NXT, but I know that's impossible with the travel schedule and house shows. But I feel like this would fix just not their injury problem, but it would make the roster feel more special, give them more time to come up with more creative ideas. Ha ha ha. So you think. And possibly help their ratings. If other TV shows can have off seasons, why not them? Well, because they're not like any other television show, that's why. Find me another television show where they take their act on the road. It's not the same thing. I know WWE would have you believe that, well, we're just like every other TV show. But it's funny, when you then judge them based on that criteria, all of a sudden you're being unfair. Well, you can't judge Raw against a show like Breaking Bad or The Walking Dead or CSI or what's that show on ABC with the doctors, the Grey's Anatomy or whatever the fuck that show is. You can't grade it the same way you would any of those other shows. That's not fair. Well, which is it? Is it a TV show or is it not a TV show? Is it it's just funny the way that sometimes people apply things in one way and not the other. But it's not the same thing. So you argue two off seasons. I argue they can't have one off season. It's not practical. And I've talked about this on the podcast over the years, off and on, probably going back to the beginning of when I started doing this show. I mean, maybe the first time I ever addressed the idea of the off-season stuff was in 2009 or 2010. So we've been talking about this for a long time. And the fact is that if you want to be practical about this, there will be no off-season. You got to take that off the table. I mean, we can sit here and talk about how great an off-season would be, but this is just pie-in-the-sky stuff. If you want to offer some kind of a real solution, I still argue that the best thing to do would be to come up with a system. And it's not going to be perfect. It's not going to be perfect. It could wreak havoc sometimes with a story that you have planned, or people get hurt and then they have to take off sooner than maybe they had planned to. But the idea that you have these cycles where each person or block of people have designated times that they are to be off during the year. Maybe it's 2 different times a year. You cycle guys in, you cycle guys out. And you try to do it where you're not, at a loss. So let's say you've got 2 big names that are going to go away for X number of weeks on their required break, their little required off season. Then you've got to have someone else or 2 other people to sort of take their place and plug into the television storylines. It wouldn't be an easy thing, I think, to come up with a system like that because, again, you've got these storylines and you can't just, arbitrarily take guys away for 6 weeks at a time. But to me, you can probably sit down, talk this out, and come up with some kind of a system that makes sense where you cycle people in and out without shutting the show down for a month. You got to remember something. They have a contract with USA Network, or I guess NBC Universal. But they're on USA Network. They are contracted to a television show 52 weeks a year. You cannot just shut this down for 4 weeks or 6 weeks because, well, we need to give people time to recharge the batteries. Unless that was written into the terms of your contract, that ain't going to fly. And that sure as hell ain't going to fly with Fox when SmackDown goes there next year. So an off-season, for that reason alone, if nothing else, is simply not practical. Forget the fact that they probably wouldn't want to lose money. After all, that's the most important thing to them. Whether it's Saudi money, American money, my money, your money, that's the only thing that really drives them and they care about. They're not going to shut down because you think it's the right thing to do or because I think it's the right thing to do. But I think a more practical way would be cycle people in and out. That could work. That could work. And look, the wrestlers may not want that. They may say, well, wait a minute, am I going to get paid? I mean, they have their base salary, but I imagine they get paid more depending on what the gates are for certain shows. So people could be losing money. Some of the wrestlers aren't going to want that. You got a single guy on the roster. Maybe he doesn't have kids. He doesn't have a family. He loves his job. He loves going on the road. You think he's going to like being told, hey, you're off for 4 weeks or you're off for 6 weeks. You may run into that issue as well, where guys are just like, look, I don't, you can't do this to me. I mean, I want to keep working. I want to keep making money. You're not going to be able to please everybody. But I do think that would be a more realistic way of going about doing it. To do what you suggested, it's just not practical.